Now, dear friends, we shall start. This is a huge subject which I have before me this morning. Isaiah chapter 43 and verse 22. But thou hast not called upon me, O Jacob, but thou hast been weary of me, O Israel. You see, I am preaching this sermon largely because I feel I am failing. Failing at the altar is real failure. There's no failure comparable to that failure. Where you meet with the Lord and you intercede for others, and you have no such place in your life. You know, where do people put a TV? In almost any hotel room now, prominently. One of the first things that hotel boys do is walk into the room ahead of you, open the room, put your baggage, and turn the TV on. They want the great communicator to be talking to you. I say, turn it off. Yes, you want to put it where you see it or you hear it. So, my dear friends, we see the ultimate altar. What is the ultimate altar? The cross. You know, Lenten time, and we are passing through the Lenten time, and people think of the diet at Lenten and other features. All right, I won't touch them. But where once and forever the offering for you and me was made, the cross. And if you take the cross out, what have you got? You have nothing. And that's exactly what people do. They have managed to bypass the cross, to obliterate the cross, the love of the cross. My dear people, of course, love makes you love in return. You cannot hate somebody who loves you. Can you? Somebody just loves you. Is it possible to hate him? Hate her? No. The coldest heart is awakened and responds to love. And if you have come to such a state where you don't respond to the cross, then let me tell you, you have suffered the ultimate death. You're a dead soul and a dead spirit. Now, whatever is making you insensitive and unresponsive to the cross, You must let it go. You must throw it out. You're only doing yourself a great favor. You're rescuing yourself. Anything that makes you unresponsive to the cross. And the altar is not there in response. My dear friend, throw it out. Because there should be nothing between you and the place of prayer or the heart of prayer. So, we are really living at some great distance from the cross. That's why we complain of the symptoms. What are the symptoms? One of the symptoms is no time for prayer. No time for prayer? Suppose a mother says, I have no time to love you, children. I'm just too busy. I have no time to love you, children. How can she be a mother? The prime duty of a mother is that love. That love which seeks to give the very best to the children. Not the scorpion in place of the egg. Not the snake in place of the fish. A mother wants to bring love. She can't help it in a way. Nature has so formed a mother. But today, we can even see people afraid of motherhood. See, this child, this baby, is going to take me off my professional career. Or some such stupid excuse. Now, folks, the ultimate altar, the cross, is it in place in your life? In 1 Kings 18 and verse 30, you see the repairing of that altar. There is a time when an altar needs to be repaired. So, how did Elijah find the altar of the Lord? Verse 30. 1 Kings 18 and verse 30. Elijah said unto all the people, Come near unto me. And all the people came near unto him. And he repaired the altar of the Lord that was broken down. So they had, in the midst of all their idolatry, they had no use for the altar of God. And it was broken down. And before Elijah could prove the living God to that idolatrous nation, he needed that altar. See, my dear friends, we may be full of good intentions, great plans. We have some noble ideas. But we are not able to turn them into real fruitful results. Why is that? There's no altar. The broken altar is not repaired. So, your great thoughts or your great plans, as I worked with young people all my life, this is what I found. Some of them had great ideals, great thoughts. But the years went by, and today, when they are on the brink of the grave, they haven't got anything really accomplished. They had great thoughts, but there was no real altar to back up those thoughts. So people are full of great ideas. And every now and again, somebody comes up with a new idea. Some wonderful idea. But it doesn't work. It doesn't lift a nation. It doesn't turn a people from their destructive ways and their course of self-destruction. What's the good of that? Now, my dear friends, so there is the repairing of the altar of the Lord. You will find that one of the most wicked kings in the recorded history of the Bible, in the 33rd chapter of 2 Chronicles, one of the most wicked kings, Manasseh. Now, this Manasseh had actually carved an image and set it up in the house of the Lord. He was that wicked. The 33rd chapter of 2 Chronicles, in the 5th verse. He built altars for all the host of heaven in the 2 courts of the house of the Lord. Blazing. Sacrilege. He said, hey, come on, set up 2 altars. I'm going to worship the moon and stars, like some people do today. You see? And he caused his children to pass through the fire. He observed times, 6th verse, and used enchantments, and used witchcraft, and dealt with a familiar spirit and with wizards. He wrought much evil in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger. He set a carved image, the idol that he had made, in the house of God. I don't know what you are putting in the place which should be a sacred place of prayer. I see many people putting self. This man made an idol, a carved image, and he set it in there, in the temple of the Lord, as though he didn't care, and dared God. Some people are daring God by setting up their own carved image. And what is that carved image? Self. Gratifying self. See, there are various ways in which you gratify self. The biggest sportsmen these days, they don't stay true to their families. That's their sport. Running away from their families is their sport. getting together with all kinds of wicked women is their sport. What is it? Carved image. An idol. Self. You know, when you put self in the place of God, it can have various manifestations. It can be sport, it can be money, it can be profession, it can be sex, it can be a number of other things. But what are you doing? You're putting a carved image in the temple of the Lord. You know, my dear friend, God got this pride down, the pride of this man down. What? He was taken captive. He was dragged amongst the thorns. 11th verse. Wherefore the Lord brought upon him the captains of the host of the king of Assyria, which took Manasseh among the thorns, and bound him with fetters, and carried him to Babylon. And when he was in affliction, he besought the Lord his God, and humbled himself greatly before the God of his fathers. He needed a right altar. And though he threw it out of his house, out of his life, yet there came the time when he said, I have no one else to turn to except the living God. One of the most wicked on record in the Bible, Manasseh. He humbled himself greatly. So, my dear friends, we must not despair of those who are too proud. You know, they appear too proud and self-sufficient. They scoff at the things of God. They call it waste of time, going to retreats, and so on. But we should not lose heart. You know, folks, we should not lose heart. God has a way of bringing them to book. And here, God brought this man to book. And he humbled himself greatly before the God of his fathers, and prayed unto him. 13th verse. And God is so merciful. He was entreated of him, and heard his supplication, and brought him again to Jerusalem, into his kingdom. Then Manasseh knew that the Lord, he was God. And what did he do immediately? He took away, the 15th verse, the strange gods and the idol out of the house of the Lord. And all the altars that he had built in the mount of the house of the Lord in Jerusalem, and cast them out of the city. That's it. All those false altars must go. He cast them out of the city. You know, when there isn't the true altar of prayer, you will get these false altars. There are so many things that make demands upon you, upon your talents, upon your resources. And, you know, those are real altars of the devil. And they have to be thrown out. He threw them out of the city. 16th verse, and he repaired the altar of the Lord. You know, it takes some doing, you know. I am going to repair the altar of the Lord. There's going to be a time when I'm going to meet him. That is, I will set aside a time You know, if I had not set aside that evening hour for God, I would have just been a talker, a vain talker all my life. I had great thoughts, great ideas, but no implementation. I believe in implementation. I don't believe in all kinds of fanciful ideas and thoughts that cannot be executed. So, if I had only neglected that time, I used to come back so tired from a match, a cricket match. All through the day, you stand in the sun, or a tennis match. I used to come back so tired, but I would never miss that time of prayer. I would go alone and pray. The altars have to be repaired, my friends, if we are going to get anything done in our short lives. And desolate altars, I can't spend much time with that. Ezekiel 6:6, the altar shall be desolate, desolate. You know, the prayer meetings have become desolate in many places. And that is the next thing that happens. The church becomes empty. The blessing stops. The nation begins to go on a nosedive. These are all consequences. No altar. You know, when you read the story of the founders of the nation, John Adams, the second president, he would stop his horse, put it in the stable on his way to Washington, the Lord's Day. He would get off, he'll spend the Lord's Day carefully. And then the business of state. He had to ride a very long way through the snows. You see, and that at a time of battle, when British forces were closing in. But he would stick to the Lord's Day. My dear people, those were men to whom the altar meant something. And today, if we try to bypass the altar, we are finished. But the Lord will help us to go to the greatest altar of all, the cross of Jesus, to humble ourselves. Let us pray. Let us tell God, "O God, let not my altars be broken down. Save me, Father, to make time at the altar of prayer, the altar of intercession. How much I seem to fail at the altar in intercession. We ask this in Jesus' holy name. Amen.